All right, everybody. Hope you are doing very, very well. I hope you guys have had a fantastic Sunday, fantastic weekend. We have some kind of big things going on today. In case you don't know, this was Selection Sunday. Selection Sunday, Scott. We finally made it to March Madness. How are you feeling?
Feeling good. Glad that we're gonna, it sounds like, have a March Madness and actually have a tournament after the disappointment of last year's cancellation of the tournament, especially last year when my Kansas Jayhawks were the number one team in the country, and then they don't get to go chase down that title. But obviously, you're rocking your Zags. You've already number one right there, so you've already given them the title this year, right? Like it's a done deal.
It's a done deal. It's done. It's not even. They shouldn't even have the tournament. Actually, they should just just call it now. Give it to them.
Careful what you wish for. What if COVID just takes over and all of a sudden there's not a tournament?
I know, right? No, I'm playing it safe. There's a lot of good teams that I feel like have a chance to put together a nice run. Illinois looked good today. There are some brackets that I've seen so far initially that have Illinois taking the whole thing, which is kind of crazy. So, yeah, we're going to be diving into this whole Selection Sunday process. Who's in, who's out, number one seeds, everything top to bottom. We aren't going to necessarily go into our picks quite yet today. So we're going to have a lot of insights today, but we're going to be saving our picks for a big Wednesday show because Thursday's when all the teams kick off on their first games. So we're going to give you all the up-to-date information on everybody, every team, and make sure that we're putting out our picks, for this year's bracket on Wednesday. So don't forget to tune in coming up on Wednesday for that. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Now, as far as everything else goes, we've, if you're new here, my name is Chris. This is Scott. We are your hosts for the Action Lab. We are here every Wednesday and Sunday, and we are trying to give you all of the best sports coverage, information, highlights, opinions that you can possibly find on Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, because we are multi-streaming on all three. So make sure if you're here, hit that follow button. Make sure you guys are a part of what we have going on moving forward. We are always going to be live twice a week at the bare minimum, and having some fun with you guys. And we like to hear what you guys have to say. So as we're going through a lot of these brackets, as we're going through everything, we want you to chime in. Who's your team? Who do you think is going to win it all? What is your opinion on some underdogs that might make a Cinderella run? We like to hear all of that because it's fun to get all your opinions. So we'll dive into that here shortly. We want to start out. We did on last Wednesday's show, we did a quick little teaser for going into the defensive free agents for the NFL. So we're going to touch on that first. We're going to cover who's going to be available free agent wise on the defensive end of the football for NFL free agency, everything that is coming up here soon. So we're going to touch on that. But other than that, let's dive into it and jump into some free agents. And then we are going to be doing some March Madness. We're going to cover everything top to bottom on that front. And then we're going to dive into our Mile High Spotlight for all the local folks here in Colorado who, haven't really been following what's been going on with the Nuggets, Avalanche, Rockies, and Broncos. So we might touch on that towards the end of our show. So hope you guys stick around for all of the goodness. But let's dive into this first one here. As far as these go, we're going to probably, cover some of these and go through them pretty quickly. But we wanted to kind of go through these and kind of give you our top 10 countdown for top 10 defensive free agents available this year. So right off the top, we have a guy that's, pretty well known across the league, Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman, he's looking for a new home potentially. So where do you think Richard Sherman's slotting in this year? What do you think he can bring to a new team? Given he's been in the league for a while, can he still provide value to a team?
I mean, I definitely think he can still provide value. Obviously, he's 10th on our list, so he's not quite the player he was, in his Seattle days and the Legion of Boom. But in his last 3 years in San Francisco, I mean, especially when they made the Super Bowl 2 seasons ago, he was one of their best players on defense. Now, he's got to find the right scheme for him. He's very scheme specific. First of all, he only plays the left side, so he's not a guy that's going to follow your top wide receiver around. So he is only going to play on the left side. He's played a lot in his career of like cover 3 defenses. So, I've actually heard the Raiders as a rumored spot. I've heard the Cowboys as a possible destination. Both those teams need a lot of help in the secondary, so that makes a lot of sense. But he can definitely contribute. Last year, unfortunately, he was only healthy for 5 games. So, the health issue is a factor. Hopefully he's fully healthy next year and can contribute and be the savvy defensive player that, can read the quarterback, can be in the right spot at least, when you're especially in that zone coverage, be where he needs to be and make plays on the ball when it comes his way. So, he's still a great player. He's a big name. He likes to talk a lot. Thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. That's why we chose that picture right there. But since he went to Stanford and stuff, but yeah, he'll contribute somewhere, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes. I don't think he'll be back in San Francisco, so I think he'll be on a new team next year.
Yeah, and might most likely be, short deal, possibly, trying to get, a couple, kind of a rent-a-player for a couple years to see if he can make an impact and make on a Super Bowl caliber team that might have a chance. But who knows where he's going to end up. I think otherwise, yeah, those other rumored teams seem to be decent fits. But, I mean, we'll see where he ends up going. Number 9, getting some pass rush here with Jadeveon Clowney. So a guy who, has kind of been up and down in his career. He never, early on in his career, didn't live up to the expectations. And then as of late, kind of gotten a little bit better. Obviously, with Tennessee, he was part of a decent defense there that, as far as a pass rush goes. But he still is, not exactly a guy that's going to really turn the corner for your team necessarily. But, in the right system and the right team, I think he can potentially be, somewhat of an impact player. So what do you think on Jadeveon?
Yeah, he waited forever to sign with Tennessee in the first place. And then unfortunately, just like Sherman, he got injured as well. So he only played 8 games last year. Didn't have a huge contribution. I don't even know if he had a sack in those 8 games. So the sack numbers weren't there, but they were the year before in Seattle. He was pretty good with Seattle the year prior. So hopefully he's a return to form. Obviously, this guy was the number 1 overall pick from Houston back in the day. He's a physical freak. He just hasn't quite put it together as the pass rusher they thought he could be, but he can definitely contribute and be, a solid above average player on your defense and contribute in that fashion. He's just not the mega star everyone kind of thought he would be when he was drafted number 1 overall.
Yeah. Where do you picture him? I haven't seen too much on where he's rumored to be slotted going anywhere. I mean, maybe there's a couple teams.
He likes to wait. He likes to wait, so he probably won't be signed. He's probably like, I don't want to be there for like the summer practices and workouts. I'll wait till like, a week into camp or 2 weeks into camp, and then I'll sign with the team. So it's hard to say right now where he'll end up. We'll just have to wait and see. A lot of these players, I think, are going to be on like a 1-year type deal. A lot of these free agents are talking about, obviously the cap hit and the NFL cap went down for the first time in forever due to COVID this past year, and is likely to increase a ton next year because it'll bounce back up to where it was and then lap it easily with the new TV contracts that are coming down. So I think a lot of players are going to be looking for just a one-year deal where they can wait till next year to really hit that money where, I don't think a lot of teams are going to be wanting to spend a ton of money in this free agency period just because of the cap being down from where it's been. So a lot of 1-year deals. I think that helps teams that are contending too. When you're talking 1-year deals and you can just rent a player kind of for a year, that player, if he's on a 1-year deal, is going to probably, it's not about the payday as much as going to a team to compete. So I think the contenders are actually going to be helped out here just in the sense that they don't have to throw a ton of money maybe at these players. And these players are going to go to a team with the idea of competing for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, I think he'll be an interesting wherever he goes. I think it's going to be kind of a curious. I'll be keeping track of where he ends up and how he ends up impacting his new team. Shaq Griffin. So this was kind of a decent one here. This is a bigger name on this list. Obviously, there was a couple guys from Seattle that are kind of in limbo with where their future is going to be. But Shaq Griffin, I mean, I honestly think he can be a nice impact player if he ends up going somewhere new.
Yeah, he's obviously not the well-known. His brother's the well-known player just because obviously his brother is missing an arm and still was able to play in the NFL and contribute. Both players being in Seattle. Shaq Griffin at cornerback been pretty solid. He's not an elite. He's not a number 1 really probably for you, but he's a very solid number 2. Can play man-to-man, can play zone, can kind of do it all. Pretty athletic. So not a star, mega star. He's not going to just be, step in the secondary and improve your secondary leaps and bounds. But if you're looking for a solid number 2 guy, I think he can fit in and place nicely and be a contributor for you.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely take a Shaq Griffin here in Denver. That's for sure. Yeah, he's going to be a guy that will for sure make a team a little bit better on defense to where, taking care of the back end of that secondary, he'll do a nice job there. So, all right, Yannick Ngakoue. I always mess it up. I always do. So, Baltimore Raven here, up for in the free agent list to number 7.
Yeah, this is another physical specimen. Obviously started his career in Jacksonville and had some monster years. 2017, when they were that elite defense that made a deep run, he had a career year for him with a ton of sacks that year. Since then, it's just kind of been not quite what you'd expect. So he kind of forced his hand and got a trade out of Jacksonville, didn't want to be there. Went to, oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank on who he went to.
Minnesota.
Minnesota. Yep. Minnesota this offseason got traded to Minnesota. Minnesota gave up a decent amount for him and didn't even keep him the rest of the season. So he got traded mid-season to Baltimore. So it's concerning to me that he's, a guy that's played on 3 teams in the last 2 years. For a guy as talented as he is, like what's the story there? Why is that happening? And then he only played in Baltimore's 2 playoff games. He played 41 snaps total, so only about 20 snaps per game. He's definitely a liability. He doesn't set the edge for in your run defense, but in third down situations as a pass rusher, he's still somebody who can definitely get to the quarterback. I just wonder why teams don't seem to want to hold on to him and retain him. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. Probably another 1 year prove it kind of deal. But
Yeah, as you mentioned, he's pure outside rush, so it doesn't work in every scheme out there. You mentioned he's a liability against the run, which that's kind of been a little bit of the knock on him. And his production has kind of fallen since 2017. So, but yeah, when he played on a historically good Jazz defense, he was solid. So I mean, we'll see what he ends up being, but he's kind of like a Ferrari. It's good at doing kind of one thing, but then he's not good at doing some of the other stuff. So we'll see where he ends up leaving to go to. But next on the list, Anthony Harris, number 6 here on our free agent NFL defensive free agent list.
Yeah, he didn't have quite the year this past year that he had. His 2 prior years, I know PFF had him ranked as one of, if not the top safety in the league, which you don't really hear his name a ton out there. Anthony Harris isn't even, Harrison Smith is their other safety. You hear more about that in Minnesota than you do Anthony Harris. But Anthony Harris on the deep end, covering those deep routes and covering the length of the field has been, he was a little down this year, like I said, but solid across the board. And prior to that, the prior 2 years, he was an elite safety. Kind of reminds me of similar to a Justin Simmons a little bit, who got franchised obviously by Denver here. So he'll be a contributor. Minnesota's kind of in a cap hell situation, so that's why they can't really retain him. But we'll see. There's a lot of decent safeties out there that'll be on the market. What you won't find in any of our guys, and I'll spoil it right now, there is no interior defensive lineman and no like interior linebackers. So if you're trying to shore up the middle of your defense, you're not doing it in free agency this year. There's some guys that you could get to kind of contribute, but there's just and I would say, these defensive players in general, this was way more difficult of a list to come up with than the offensive players. I think the offensive side of the football has a lot more top line talent and deeper in free agency this year than the defensive side of the ball. So if you're a team that's trying to get better on defense, you might want to look more to the draft. Although these guys definitely can contribute, there's not like a surefire, elite defender who you can come in day one and just be the best player on your defense necessarily.
Yep. P. Nix in the chat. Sounds like a similar situation to Juwan James liability wise. I think you're referring to the last Yannick on the number 7. Yeah, he's a little bit of a liability. Just kind of not necessarily going to be able to hold down the fort and get you all the value from that position as you would like to see. Penix also, that's why the Broncos should go for corner and free agency and inside linebacker early in the draft.
Yeah, what I've heard is, outside of trying to retain some of their free agents, their free agent focused is on corner, which it needs to be. They released a couple guys, so their secondary is pretty light at corner right now for sure. So they'll definitely be targeting some people. A guy I almost put on this list, but kind of has dropped off the last year or two, that I've heard Denver might be interested in is actually Patrick Peterson, the corner out of Arizona. Big name, all-pro guy for years, getting up there in age, but kind of debated whether to put him on here. But I thought, him versus Richard Sherman. Sherman's played a little more consistently lately, so he didn't quite get the nod.
Penix, thanks for all the chat, and thanks for coming back. It's good to see you back in the chat. Love it. So jumping at number 5, William Jackson from the Bengals. William Jackson coming in here on our list. What are your thoughts on William Jackson?
I think William Jackson, he's the top corner on our list. So I wouldn't say normally William Jackson's going to be the top corner in a free agency period, but this year he is. So he's borderline one, number one for you. Played pretty solidly with Cincinnati in a team that's defensively doesn't have a ton of talent. Although we got another guy on this list that I like a lot. That's going to be a free agent on the defensive side from Cincy as well. But between him, the next guy on this list, and then they got like Bates at safety. But outside of that, they don't have a ton of talent. He's played really solid in the secondary for him. He's gonna, he's a borderline top 30 corner in the league. So, certainly someone that can help come in and help you out. And I'm sure a lot of teams will be looking at him.
I mean, he's only 28. He's had some decent production. He's a prime candidate to get a little bit more money than he would probably expect to get. And I think, he's definitely going to be, able to, keep stepping up that game. He has a lot of mileage left on him, too. So that's always nice to see. All right, perfect. So let's go ahead. Let's hit number 4. Same team, Karl Lawson coming in at number 4.
Yeah, Karl Lawson, when you look at his stat numbers through his career, it doesn't jump off the page for you. Granted, I think he's still only 26, so he's coming off his rookie deal. And, the pure stack numbers don't jump off the page at all, but his pressure rate is actually really impressive. I think his pressure rates are above 10%, which is, one of the best in the league. I think, he's an athletic specimen, on a defense that just didn't have a lot of other guys. And quite frankly, a lot of those years they were always losing, so the other team was probably running the ball late in the game, and he didn't just get to tee off and get after the quarterback. So he's a guy I would love to see Kansas City go after. Think he can play both a run and pass. Still 26. We'll see if they do. I haven't heard necessarily that rumor there, but I like Karl Lawson a lot. I think he's going to make a team pretty happy, although I have heard rumors that since he's actually working really hard to keep him there. So we'll see. Actually, tomorrow, we didn't even mention that tomorrow is technically the window to begin where you can technically contact the players' agents if you're a GM and start talking prior to free agency, which I believe starts Wednesday, which is funny because let's be honest, all these people have already been talking for weeks and months now. But
No
it's
secret.
technically legal. It's technically legal starting tomorrow. So we might get a lot of news drops tomorrow on where players are likely heading or where they're rumored to go, because they probably, a lot of these guys already know where they're going.
Yeah.
They just can't say it yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Karl Lawson, I mean, he is I think he's in the same situation as one of our top people on this list, where the Bengals didn't tag him, which was really kind of, confusing. Like, you would want to tag a nice, solid young guy who's really performing at a high level. And I think he's in the same boat, as they're trying to work something out to get him a little bit better of a deal or something behind the scenes. So, you mentioned he's been performing well. Pressure 64, second in quarterback hits in 24 among edge rushers. Yeah, I mean, I think he's one of those guys that you want to make sure nice young piece on your defensive line can do some really, really big things for your team as far as the pass rush goes. So we'll see. We'll see what happens if they end up keeping him there in Cincinnati or not. All right, number 3, Bud Dupree, Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, another guy who got unfortunately banged up and tore his ACL after I think he played 10 plus games last year. In the 11th game, he tore his ACL. Obviously, Pittsburgh, with Bud Dupree in the lineup, was an undefeated football team. So him, along with their middle linebacker that got injured, that I'm drawing a blank on right now, but those two injuries on their defense really crippled them quite a bit. Bud Dupree in 11 games last year had 8 sacks. So in the year prior, he had 11 and a half sacks. They tagged him. He was actually on the franchise tag playing this past year. And unfortunately then got the ACL tear. So he's coming off that. So probably it may just be a one go for him to see health factor wise how he's looking. People may want to shy off and make sure, but here's a guy that, plays both sides of both sides of the run and the pass really well on a Pittsburgh defense that was really, really elite when he was in the lineup. Obviously he wasn't the number one defensive. You have Watt on the other side that got a lot of attention, but he still made plays when they were there for him. So he's been productive. Think he's going to be a nice piece somewhere. I think he's gone. He's definitely not coming back in Pittsburgh, so he'll be somewhere else. So we'll see where he goes.
Yeah, I mean, a late season torn ACL definitely took a toll on his value. He's strong. He's versatile. I mean, I think he can make a decent contract for 2 to 3 years for another team and be able to get you nice production over that period of time. So, it's going to be fun to see where he ends up. Number 2, John Johnson. What a name, by the way. Number 2. It's like John Johnson.
What should we name our son? I got nothing. But I know he's your son, John. So let's just go with John Johnson.
It's so original, right? John Johnson coming in.
I did have a high school teacher that was also named John Johnson. So there's others out there. He's not alone.
So what are your thoughts here for John Johnson?
Another guy, I think he's just 25 right now, so he's real young. Not the name. Obviously, when you think of the Rams, who had the number 1 defense in the NFL this past year, you think it's 2 guys. It's obviously such an unfortunate name. Tough break there, but who am I thinking of? Corner from Jacksonville. I'm drawing a blank right now on names really well. And Aaron Donald, obviously, on the defensive line, are the 2 guys you think of on the Rams defense for sure. Jalen Ramsey, now that it's come to me, now that I can actually focus for a second. My ADD got me there for a little bit. But this was a guy that has incredible range. You can't have a great defense and a great secondary with just two guys on your defense. He wasn't a guy that was talked about. Roamed as a free safety for the first time this year. Had 8 passes defense, only 1 pick, but had over 100 tackles. So he's a good tackler. He played, obviously, he was debatably their 3rd or 4th best defender on the number 1 defense in the NFL. So not a name a lot of people have probably heard of for whatever reason, but his production on the field has been really, really elite in his 4 years in LA, and minus 2 years ago, he had the injury bug as well, but fully healthy this past year, contributed a lot, and we'll see. Rams have some cap issues as well, so we'll see where he ends up.
By the way, Steph, thanks for popping in, and our Facebook chat is working. That is a surprise.
We did it.
We did it. I don't even know how we did it, but our Facebook. So Steph, hey, thanks for throwing out some things. We've been working with their support, Streamlabs support, to try to get that fixed, and they actually are still working on that. Yet we're getting you to come through, so we can finally see your comments on our main stream. So hey, there we go. Glad to see you up on the big board. Everyone else who's watching in Facebook, YouTube, again, hit us up with your comments and keep the chat rolling. We'd love to see it. Perfect. And then number 1, Shaq Barrett. Shaq Barrett is our number 1 NFL defensive free agent here. Now, this is kind of a tease because I have a feeling they're trying to do what they can to keep him there. We don't know. They didn't tag him, which that's what everyone is expecting him to go down that route. But there's also some rumors behind the scenes that he could potentially stay in for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and restructure a deal that ends up working for them. So I would say they're going to do what they can to keep him there. If it's my opinion, I think he's going to end up being a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, but you never know what could happen. I mean, there could be a team out there that ends up, luring him away a little bit. So, Scotty, what do you think is going to happen with Shaq?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with you. I think he commented either on Instagram or something. I think Tom Brady posted a picture of him signing his contract extension and said, let's not run it back. They're not running it back because that was the Chiefs thing. But whatever their slogan is for bringing everyone back, he actually commented in there along the lines of yeah, let's do it. So he's certainly likely to be back in Tampa. But having this guy as the number 1, probably, I don't know if it hurts you more or hurts me more, because obviously he started his career in Denver, never really got to be a starter on a defense that had, Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware for a bit. And then they drafted, obviously, I am just on fire with names tonight. Their defensive lineman they took at number 5 overall the few years ago. Bud Dupree. No, not Bud Dupree. That's a guy we already talked about. I'm just gonna stop talking. And for the Chiefs' vantage point, he wreaked havoc obviously in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs offensive line and Patrick Mahomes. So I don't actually like looking at this picture at all. I'm just assuming it was from the Super Bowl. You can't even tell. But I'm sure this was from the Super Bowl, and he's just dancing away as happy as could be.
It's sad for both of us because, one, he beat you guys in the Super Bowl, and he was a big factor in that. And two, he left the Broncos for us, and we just let him go, and now we're, just struggling as a franchise. So that's unfortunate for both of us, but it is what it is. Sorry to see him just really just make us feel sad as Chiefs and Broncos fans. But it sounds like, he's not going to probably be going anywhere, but we'll see. We'll see. A lot can happen. Things change rapidly when, money starts talking and teams start giving you a call and, you never know. So cool. But that's going to wrap up our NFL defensive free agent list. So thank you guys for being a part of that, but we have something big now. We're going to get to our bread and butter here. We're getting to our big March Madness special. We had Selection Sunday today, and we have a lot to talk about here. There's so much to go through. So we want to cover all of this and make sure that you have all the information you need to kind of, start thinking about your bracket a little bit, kind of what to expect. And hey, you know what? We're going to have a tournament this year, and it's super exciting. I think that's, one of the overall big things with this. And we're starting off here with the number 1 overall seed. So this was announced, and the Gonzaga Bulldogs right here representing the Zags.
This was a shocker.
This was no surprise to anybody that they were going to get the number 1 overall seed, being undefeated. They have a chance to have that perfect undefeated season, which hasn't happened in a long time. I think it was 68?
76. Indiana Hoosiers.
76. There we go. I'm off by like 10 years.
You teed me up. Hey, I don't know names, so we're good. We're even.
We're balancing it here. So number 1 overall seed. A lot of people picked preseason the Zags to do a big run and potentially make it to the final game, but a lot of things are changing. Even though they're undefeated, there are some teams that have been showing up in their conference tournaments and just been unbelievable. So we're going to go into some of those teams here soon. We're going to break down each region. We're going to see what surprises happen, what surprises, whether it's teams that got in, teams that didn't get in, those types of things here shortly. So we're gonna kind of cruise through these. But Zags will be the number 1 overall. I think they're still the favorite in Vegas as of right now to win the whole thing. So that's still consistent. But you're getting some value on some other teams. I think potentially like an Illinois or someone else in the tournament that a lot of experts are saying could make a deep run and potentially win it all. So we'll see what happens there. But here's a breakdown of the conferences of what ended up happening here. Oops, sorry.
Just wanted to continue to look at those Zags.
Yeah, absolutely. So the most berths we had were from the Big Ten, and 9 berths from the Big Ten, 7 from the Big 12, 7 from the Atlantic Coast. Southeastern SEC was 6, Pac-12 was 5, Big East was 4. The rest of these had 2 bids each. So that's kind of how the breakdown took place when it came to selecting teams from each conference. Do you see anything here, Scotty, that really stands out to you as far as the breakdown of where these teams are coming from?
No, I don't think there was a ton of surprises here. There was some bubble teams that got in that adjusted these. My thing is so the Big Ten got 9 in. That's great. But basically what that tells you is all you had to do to get in the Big Ten is be, 500 essentially in your Big Ten record. When your 9 of 12 teams are getting in, it just sometimes I wonder how, especially in this year where a lot of teams missed their non-conference games, everything was more condensed with COVID and, cancellations. how good are these Big Ten teams based off of the fact that they were just playing each other and everyone assumes they were beating each other up. But maybe they're a lot more just average all the way around than we think. We'll see. I'm not saying that's the case, but it's hard to tell how good a team is when you're able to, like Ken Palm has those rankings I've talked about. Wisconsin, he has as the 10th ranked team in his, and they went 17-12 this year. And they are actually a 9 seed. But so there's a lot of teams in there where it's just tough to tell, are these good teams or are these a lot of solid teams, but not great teams that are battling back and forth. But obviously they have a couple 1 seeds, which we'll get into here, and some 2s as well. So they're loaded. Big 12 got 7 of 10. And so they're kind of the same story as the Big 10. Getting 7 of 10 in is certainly really impressive. ACC is, this is, in my opinion, the worst the ACC has ever been as a conference in a season. They got 7 in, but I think they have 16 teams in their conference, so quite a few. And when Georgia Tech, who's unranked, is winning your conference tournament, how good of a conference do you have? Granted, obviously Virginia had to drop out due to COVID issues, but they don't have that elite top talent that normally you see. Obviously, Duke's not even in the tournament. Do you like though how Duke was like, our season's over, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh wait, unless we get picked for the tournament, then we'll play. And then they didn't, and they're like, we're not playing in the NIT, which I'm not surprised by at all. Like Coach K's like, if you guys want to play, you can, but I'm not gonna go. I'm too old for that.
Yeah, so, ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, so I'm really glad they didn't get picked because they had already basically forfeited their season already, and then they backtracked and was like, oh, unless you guys want to choose us for some reason, even though we were 13-11 this year. But anyway, but overall, there's a good mix of conferences. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think too, it's weird, right? Because you have some teams that didn't play full schedules. So you'll see like the records that are like, super low games that they've played. It's kind of like, all right, well, how good are you really if you didn't play your full schedule of games? And then you had teams that got knocked out of their conference tournaments. We mentioned that on this last week, the show that we had, top seeded team in one of the smaller conferences didn't end up making it. You had a couple other teams like Virginia, Duke, obviously, that weren't able to play in their conference tournaments. So how would that affected, some of those games that, maybe Georgia Tech doesn't even get in the tournament if they don't end up, winning that. It's one of those things that I think there's some watered down aspects to this year that I wouldn't necessarily say is good for the tournament, but it's gonna make the difference, the polarizing sides for the top teams that much stronger, the case for those teams, because you're playing teams that are getting in based off of, some questionable records, some other teams that didn't end up playing in their conference tournaments. And, I think that's going to benefit a lot of the powerhouse teams, the top-ranked teams in this. So maybe you might not see a lot of the upsets that you would typically see on a normal bracket from March Madness standpoint.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find it in the news because I read on like Twitter, you referenced the team that won their conference regular season and then didn't get to play in their conference tournament due to COVID. I read somewhere, and I haven't found the results, so it's probably not even true, that it was actually a coach on the team that tested positive, and then the next day, after they had pulled themselves out of the tournament, he apparently tested negative. I feel like I'd be able to find that in the news, so that's probably not accurate, but if it is, that would be – I'd be so mad if I was a player on that team.
It would be awful.
Not only did we get screwed out of going, but – then it was a false positive. I feel like maybe they should have done multiple tests in the same day to verify it. I don't know how it all works. It seems like testing isn't an issue anymore, where it's not like, oh, don't take all the tests from everybody else, because people are now, it's the vaccine. So if that's true, which like I said, I can't confirm that because I can't find it for sure, but that would be the worst ending to a season ever.
Yeah, it's I mean, the fact that ends up just wrecking your number one overall season in your conference and you're not able to compete, brutal. It's absolutely awful for that team. I had it in my notes. I don't know where I misplaced my notes from my previous show, but yeah, it's one of those things that you feel bad for. But I mean, you got to feel bad for some other teams too. Now going into this. The last four that got in here, you got Michigan State, UCLA, Drake, and Wichita State that were the last four in. So these teams, they were kind of on that bubble watch, ended up getting in. Michigan State is playing a UCLA, I believe, in the first round. We'll get to that here in a second, which is kind of an interesting matchup because that was that was one that surprised some of the panelists when it came to the releasing the schedule. That those two teams are playing each other right off the bat to get into this. As far as these last four in, were you surprised on any of these?
Not shocked on any of them. Wichita State and UCLA have both kind of been trending in the wrong direction in the season. My biggest complaint with this, I get it. It's going to be an exciting matchup to watch Michigan State versus UCLA. But my thing is the whole point of adding these last four in playing games is to the whole battle with the bubble is, do you take an average team from a power conference, or do you take a team with a really good record from a lesser mid-major conference? So the whole point of it is to see who's actually better in that sense. Is it the elite mid-major, or is it the average power conference team that played a much tougher schedule? So I know everyone's going to be excited to watch Michigan State versus UCLA. I am too, but I feel like it should be the mid-major should face the power team. So I think Michigan State should either play Wichita State or Drake, and UCLA the other team. That's just what makes sense to me. So then we can kind of get a feel for, all right, are these average Power 5 teams better than, the elite of the mid-majors, or vice versa? I'd rather see that, honestly. I think that's the point of it, at least.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't really see any of these four teams really making a big impact on the tournament, making a big run. Michigan State's obviously Tom Izzo has had, his consecutive tournament streak extended, so he's definitely happy about that. But I mean, I don't think Michigan State. Our mother-in-law is a big Michigan State fan, and hey. I hope they do okay, but I just don't see it happening. I don't think that's going to be one of those that's going to get you excited once they get knocked out in the first round or two.
I'll never rule out Izzo in a tournament, though. He seems to.
He knows.
It's almost like his best teams struggle, especially in the first few rounds, and his underdog teams make runs all the time. It seems like. So we'll see what happens here, but I'm not going to rule out an Izzo team. That would be the one team from here that I think could potentially make a run. The rest of these teams, I don't really see. Maybe they get win their opening matchup, and then the first round game they take as well. But I don't think any of these teams will likely be a Sweet 16 squad. But if I picked one, it's definitely Michigan State.
Yeah. Well, if there's last four in, there's got to be the first four out. So the first four out end up being, unfortunately, one of our teams that we really wanted to see in. Colorado State, I mean, based off of their resume, could have easily gotten in. I know, when I was watching the Selection Sunday special here, a couple of the panelists were like, what are your big surprises here? And they were like, Louisville and St. Louis are the two big surprises here. And I was like, well, Louisville and St. Louis? I feel like Colorado State's resume is pretty decent compared to Louisville, who didn't play a lot of games. And then St. Louis, same thing. Yeah. COVID wrecked those two teams. So it's not like, they had a lot of games under their belts to make up for, and even then they're not exactly the best records for teams that missed a lot of games. So, from that standpoint, I was like, CSU looks like the strongest one on this list that maybe missed out on a bid.
Yeah, obviously that's my school right there. Disappointed. I had a feeling there were too many big name teams on the bubble with, your UCLA, Michigan State, Louisville. I felt like that, unfortunately, I tried to convince myself that their semifinal matchup in the conference tournament against Utah State, that wasn't like a win and you're in, lose and you're out, but that's what it ended up being. And I couldn't even stay up for that game because somehow I don't know who's in charge of the Mountain West Conference tournament, but somehow when you have 2 games in a day, so this was the semifinal round. The game here, which we're an hour later than Las Vegas, where they play the tournament, obviously, but it started at 10:45. I'm like, I don't have the ability to be up till 1 a.m, especially with my 3 children, to watch CSU. So I didn't even see the game. They lost by 12, didn't only put up 50 points. So it sounds like it was an ugly game, but unfortunately they didn't get in. The thing about these first 4 teams is they're out for now, but they're not out for sure, because in the year of COVID, any team that from this point on gets hit with COVID and has to pull out of the tournament, these 4 teams in order of, I believe it's Louisville, Colorado State, St. Louis, and then Ole Miss, in that order, would take the place of these teams. So
but once the tournament starts, it's done. Like once they play
correct.
that first game, so they have up until this Thursday to avoid any kind of COVID issues. Any team in the tournament to avoid any COVID issues before these teams step in and take over for that. So I don't even know how that works do they reseed then?
I think they just fill in at that seed. You can't reseed at that point. Everyone knows their matchups. They've been preparing for it. Because some of these teams might get a 1 seed. Like, it's possible that one of these teams ends up with a 1 seed. They don't reseed it. They just take the place of them, which would be wild. Actually, I don't know what you call him, uncle-in-law John texted me. He's like, wouldn't it be great if CSU took the place of Kansas? And I'm like, listen, I want to see CSU in it too. But no thanks. Let's keep Kansas in there. C Stemper in the chat. You're right, Scott. Don't count Izzy and MSU out. I don't know if Izzy was a typo, but I kind of like Izzy. I might start calling him Izzy.
No,
maybe that's a nickname that I'm not aware of.
No, they call him Izzy. Yeah,
do they call him Izzy?
I mean, I've called him Izzy.
Did you hear? I didn't even get to. Did you hear what Michigan State's their basketball team is now referred to as? They signed a sponsorship deal.
I have not heard this.
I gotta look this up. It's insane, and this is real. I'm not making this up. Hold on, I gotta find this.
C Stemper, tell us in chat how far you got Michigan State going. We would love to see what your thoughts are on that. Are they going to make the Sweet 16, the Elite 8? Are they going all the way? Let us know. And then also Facebook chat. I know it's kind of quiet. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, or if you're watching on Twitch and you just haven't chimed in yet, let us know your thoughts on who you want to win the tournament, who you guys want to see make a big run, who's your favorite teams, those sort of things. So just make sure you're just, throwing it in there.
So I found it. They announced this past Thursday a new 5-year deal with Detroit-based Rocket Mortgage as a sponsor of the Michigan State. It's just the basketball team. So they are now known as the MSU Spartans, presented by Rocket Mortgage. Like, that's what you have to call them. And that's what all the signage throughout the Breslin Center where they play will be from now on. Like,
okay.
That is the most ridiculous.
Okay.
Like,
first of all,
shameless. All about the bottom dollar, right?
I get you can make some money here, but there's a point where it turns into something like really cartoonish and really awful. It's really bad. That's crazy. Sponsorships, and if it's happening with Michigan State, other schools, given the fact that like COVID and everything else is affecting some of these things. I don't. It's going to be interesting to see what ends up other teams doing this too, and it's going to be ridiculous. Deb, Zags all the way. Steph. Ooh, that's awful. Yeah, it is awful. It's absolutely terrible. Like when Ohio tried to take the yeah, it's just like, it's too much. Like, I get it. Like, when you get it, like, Sports Authority Field at Mile High or all these different, like, sponsorships for, like, arenas, I get it. But, like, some of these, when you're doing that with teams, like we saw it in the NHL, they named the conferences. I like the conferences. That's fine. Each conference has its own thing. When you're naming an individual team, that's kind of a little bit far for me. I don't know if I could get on board with that. But
I think Rocket Mortgage is just spending a great amount of money to do this, and everyone's just gonna be like, I want to avoid Rocket Mortgage because this is a joke, right? This isn't real.
C. Stemper, Spartans by Rocket Mortgage. Boo. Yeah, I mean, you got the Michigan State fans even not liking it. It's it's weird. I don't know. It's not my cup of tea. So who knows? When you start seeing it with like Duke presented by Google, or Duke or North Carolina presented by Target, like what? It's so strange. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't get on board with it. No.
Coach K will retire and make sure they're no longer called the Duke Blue Devils. They're just called the Duke Coach K's. Like, he'll spend the money just to make sure that everyone knows that he's the greatest, even when he's retired.
Crazy. Yeah, out of control. But let's dive into these regions here. So we have some of these regions now. Michigan this is the East region. Now we have a lot to unpack in each of these, but we're going to break some of these down. So Michigan is the number 1 seed here. Now they're going to be challenged. Alabama is on the 2 side, so they're the opposite end of this bracket. You'll notice that Colorado has slotted in at number 5. So, by the way, Colorado, I don't know, it was unfortunate that they lost again in their conference championship game. But the commentary by Bill Walton, if you guys watch the game, it is the most insane. I don't really, I'm not a drugs person, but if I was, that would be one of the most interesting broadcasts I would ever watch. So if you don't know, Bill Walton, he's an old NBA, he's a NBA legend. He's a Hall of Famer. He's been he's a top 50 NBA player of all time. He's a great college, player from, back in his college days. And he just, his screw is a little bit loose. Ella Cole in chat, I thought for sure he was on drugs. Yikes, making animal sounds. If you didn't watch, he was imitating beavers and buffaloes with like grunts and stuff. It was the weirdest broadcast I've ever heard.
I don't hear a ton of his games anymore, but I mean, it's kind of like, if I had to listen to him do every one of my team's games, I'd be like, this drives me nuts. But for like one game, I'm just like, is this guy out of his mind? Like, he is. And I don't think it's any secret that he does partake in some marijuana at that least. I mean, he's rocking like tie-dye shirts all the time. He's back in the 60s for sure. But maybe if you're on the same drugs as him and you're listening, you're like, this is the single most brilliant man I've ever seen speak. Like, this is it. He is brilliant in every point. That buffalo growl sounded, or groan, or whatever a buffalo does, sounded exactly like a buffalo.
He was like, we're in the desert in Nevada, and this is where beavers thrive in these dry, arid environments. And we're like, wait, what? Wait, sure.
I think they're in water usually, right?
Yeah, typically. But hey, to Bill Walton, I mean, the memes were fantastic. Like, people were like doing like, what, like the split screen of like memes, like what we see on TV, and it's a normal, basketball game, and what Bill Walton sees, and it's like a tie-dye swirled, like, image of the game. Oh, it's so good. It was insane. I mean, it is entertaining. I'm not gonna lie. Back to chat. It's okay for bowl games, but not for teams. Then they'll start changing uniforms, etc. Yeah, I think Steph is referring to sponsorships and stuff. Also, go blue, Michigan Wolverines all the way. We have a lot of actual Michigan fans in our family that are actually going to Michigan currently, that are all about Michigan. I think, last time the Zags played Michigan, it was kind of a big deal. There was a lot of text strings back and forth with a lot of memes and things. So, yeah. So, hey, more fuel for the Michigan Wolverines, which have a really, really good chance to make a good run in this one. So, but yeah, as far as this side of the bracket goes, you have Iona on the bottom. You have playing Alabama, which Rick Pitino is coaching that team, bringing them back, and that's kind of a big story for them. They obviously don't necessarily have a huge chance against Alabama. Alabama played really well all season long. Also, looking at the rest of this bracket, you have, you have the 12 that we were talking about Colorado, the 12-5. There's usually a 12-5 upset that we usually look out for. And as much as I hate to say it, and maybe, some of our streamers, some of our viewers in the chat, I know we have a couple Colorado folks. I don't know. This might be a Georgetown upset, the way Georgetown, they played really well in the Big East tournament and ended up taking that down. Coach Patrick Ewing has that team playing really, really well. So if you're looking for a 12-5 upset, Colorado didn't look good in their conference. I mean, they competed, but they fell short in that game. So look out for the Georgetown upset, and let me know in the chat if you think otherwise, all you CU fans out of Boulder, whether or not you think that's going to be an upset. But Scotty, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think this bracket overall isn't the strongest by any means. From the Colorado vantage point, CU's been a really solid squad this year. Deserves that 5 seed. You're right though. Georgetown is a 12. Georgetown, you look at their record, 13-12, not impressive. They've won 8 of their last 10, and won the Big East tournament in convincing fashion. I think they won the title game against Creighton, who's in the tournament as a good team, by like 25. They beat Villanova in the tournament. They beat Seton Hall, who was like a bubble team, until they beat them to eliminate them. So it's not like they were just beating, some crappy teams in the Big East tournament. They were beating the best teams in the Big East. They're going to be a dangerous team. Patrick Ewing, a coach. So that 5-12 one is one to flag for sure. Although I know I went to CSU, but I cheer for CU as well, and I'd like to see him win that game. So we'll see what happens there. I'm a Big 12 guy, so I've seen a lot of Texas. I like this bracket for Texas. Texas won the Big 12 tournament. Obviously, they got a bye in the semis against my Jayhawks due to COVID, but still beat a really good Oklahoma State team in the title game there. So I look for, like, we'll see, and I haven't analyzed everything yet, but I think like a Michigan-Texas Elite Eight matchup is kind of what I see. I know you like Alabama a lot. Maybe I'm just a hater, but I'm like, they win enough in football. I can't, even if I think they're the better team, I can't consciously pick them because, let other teams have basketball. You already got football. You're good.
Yeah. You monopolized football for the school, right? For the SEC, for an entire sport. So, why does Alabama have to be good at everything? Deb in chat, upset for sure. For that, not confident, no confidence in Colorado teams. Yeah, and totally get that. Like they shouldn't have given us any major confidence as far as that goes when it comes to, whether or not they can actually get out of the first round or second round. They always kind of start out slow in tournaments, and they just don't end up. Even the best teams, even some of the teams that Tad Boyle's had that have made the tournaments that you think, man, they got a couple NBA caliber players on this team, they can really make some noise, don't end up making any noise, and it's kind of frustrating. So we'll see. Hopefully, as far as us being Colorado, local here, I think that's going to be one of those that I hope Colorado ends up doing some things that can win a game, but I'm really concerned about Georgetown.
They've only won one tournament game since Chauncey Billups was a point guard for CU. So they won one game in 2012, I believe. Other than that, you got to go back to 97 and Chauncey to an NCAA tournament win. So it'd be good to see him get a W, and against a program like Georgetown and Patrick Ewing, it'd be fun. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I think Texas has a big chance to make a run here as well. As you mentioned, Texas is a sneaky team. They don't necessarily scream out like deep run, but keep an eye out for Texas. I think those can be some of those teams that are kind of middle of the road over the course of this season, but still turning it on at a certain time that they can make a nice little run with the momentum that they have. So let's go ahead. Let's shift over to the next region. Now we have the Midwest region. So here's an interesting one. You have Illinois at the top here. Illinois is the best team in this whole set of games here. Now, obviously, they're ranked number one because they are the best team, but a lot of people are loving what they did. They beat Ohio State in their conference championship game. Fairly close game. I mean, it was kind of back and forth throughout the game, but they ended up winning. And the Illini are looking really, really solid this year. Some early projections from experts have them playing against Gonzaga in the championship game. That's how a lot of people are thinking that they can make a big run. So keep an eye on them as a number one seed. A lot of people have them, going pretty far. So as far as some of the other teams in this that stand out to me, West Virginia is another one. You always have a really dangerous team in West Virginia, and San Diego State out of the Mountain West. San Diego State, they can do some damage. Liberty is one of the further down sleeper teams that I've seen. Also, some projections of Liberty. They've won 12 straight games heading into the tournament. This program is 82-16 over the last 3 seasons. Pulled a 5-12 upset in 2019. So, I mean, Liberty, they know what to do when it comes to getting some wins going into a tournament and maybe making some upsets. So keep an eye on them in this corner of the bracket. As far as some of these others go, you got Loyola Chicago. Loyola Chicago, they won their Missouri Valley Conference. So they're really, really poised. They had a 77-66 loss to Wisconsin, but as far as that was kind of one of their losses that they had against a bigger team. But at the same time, they've 24-4 record is nothing to just totally disregard from a Loyola Chicago team. So could be a sleeper there as far as that goes. So on this one, Oregon State, I think that one, I don't see the 5-12 upset here. Tennessee is definitely a team that I think out of the SEC will take that matchup. Oregon State in that Colorado game didn't look great against Colorado. I thought that was kind of a back and forth game, and they kind of struggled against Colorado in my opinion. But Tennessee is a lot better team, so I think you won't need to worry about that here.
Yeah, I think Illinois, obviously coming off the Big Ten tournament win, really hot team right now. Blew out Michigan a couple weeks ago when Michigan was riding high. But they did not get any favors, I think, in this. This is a tough bracket for them. And not in the sense that I think the bottom half is actually weaker than the top half. You look at the top half of that bracket. Oklahoma State is a 4 seed. I'm shocked that they got a 4. I thought they were a borderline 2, but probably slotted in as a 3. West Virginia is the 3 here. Oklahoma State's beat West Virginia twice in the past couple weeks. They beat them in the Big 12 conference tournament and at the end of the regular season. So I don't know, why West Virginia got the 3 over Oklahoma State. But you're right. Oklahoma State now as a 4 seed has a really tough matchup actually with Liberty. The 5-12 game, Tennessee's, really solid, especially on the defensive end of the floor. Almost won their conference tournament, lost a close one at the end to Alabama. Oregon State won the Pac-12 conference championship. Georgia Tech won the ACC conference tournament. Loyola Chicago in Ken Palm's rankings is the number 9 team overall in the country, and they're an 8 seed. So you have Illinois, who, let's say they have to play Loyola Chicago. So that's, if you're Loyola Chicago and you're playing Big Brother Illinois in your second round game, they are going to play as hard as they possibly can. And I could see that being a really tough game for Illinois. I think they're the better team, obviously, but that game's not going to be easy for them. They have to face Oklahoma State or Tennessee. That's going to be tough. I think the bottom half of this is the weaker. I don't think Houston's a super strong 2 seed. I don't think West Virginia is a very strong 3 seed, but that top half is tough. So we'll see what happens in the top half. And, their easiest game might be in the Elite 8 if they make it that far. Yeah. Outside of the 16, their first round matchup. But
I mean, yeah, you mentioned Houston. Cleveland State isn't a knockover team too. 19-7 record. But that team has come a long way since they lost to Ohio State on December 13th. And that was a 67-61 close nail biter with Ohio State. So, I mean, they played a nice, strong Ohio State team strong for that particular part of the season. And, they've been playing and competing all season long. Last time, they had the old school memories of Clinton Smith, Ken Mouse McFadden, and, that 1985-86 team that made that Sweet 16 run, like that was, this kind of is a reminder of that. Like they, can do some damage here. And Houston, I think, they're a good team, but they're definitely not. I mean, you don't see too many 2 seeds get upset. So I don't know if we end up taking Cleveland for this when we actually make our picks on Wednesday on our show coming up. But I mean, it's not a shoo-in that Houston wins this game as the number 2 seed. A lot can happen. So.
I appreciate you going back to 85, 86 when you would have been negative years old. So
I would have been, yeah. That's way before my time, 2 years before my time. But hey, you know what? I'm a historian of sorts, and by historian, I'm not a historian at all. So I think this one definitely is interesting. Syracuse got in here. Same thing with Georgia Tech. A couple teams that. Georgia Tech ends up getting the 9 seed against Loyola Chicago. There's a couple teams here that I don't feel are as strong. We'll kind of
the thing about Syracuse though is these teams don't face the zone that Syracuse plays all year, so they have to figure out how to adjust to that. Where Syracuse, when they're playing teams in the ACC conference, obviously those teams are prepped for it. They've seen it before. They know how to kind of attack it. So Syracuse is always a tough out in the tournament because these teams just don't face a zone defense like Syracuse always plays. So even though I think San Diego State's had a better year and is the better team, I think that might be a tough matchup for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. Interesting region here in the Midwest. Overall, I think kind of a tougher region, especially for Illinois. So we'll see how they end up navigating it. Still have a pretty good feeling that they're going to kind of push through this one. I think seeing a either Illinois and Tennessee matchup in the, later on in the tournament around, what is that, Sweet 16 it would be.
Sweet. Yep. Did you say Illinois, Tennessee? That'd be Sweet 16.
Yeah, Sweet 16. So I think that would be a fascinating matchup between 2 really, really good teams. Unless obviously Liberty ends up coming in and doing some crazy things, but I don't necessarily see that happening. I think Tennessee is going to kind of walk away with that little corner of this region. So let's move on to the South. So the South region, owned by the Baylor Bears, who have definitely not played the best basketball on the Taylor end of their season. They've kind of, started out, they rocketed out of the gate, and they've been unbelievable for 2/3 of the season, and then all of a sudden kind of derailed a little bit. So they're definitely susceptible for, whatever may happen early on in this tournament. But I think they're still very strong. I think there's a couple games that I was targeting in this one that could be fascinating. So I'm going to skip over the 5-12. We'll get to that one in a second. The Colgate-Arkansas game could be the highest scoring game on the planet. These 2 teams freaking just run the court. Both these teams do exactly the same thing, and they just score. They don't really play a lot of defense. It's a lot of, just back and forth. If you're betting, take the over in this game, whatever it ends up being, because it's going to be all over the place. But there's some people that say Colgate has a decent chance in a shootout. Colgate can do some crazy things. So that's going to be a fun one in the opening round that I'll have my eye on. Otherwise, Winthrop is another one that's really, really strong, I think, if for another 12-5 upset. Now, the Eagles are back in the tournament for the first time since 2017. Second appearance under Coach Pat Kelsey. So 4 players who average double figures. You got Chandler Vaudrin, you got freshman DJ Burns, and then, a couple other nice young talented players there. They rank top 10 in the country in rebounding. Good formula to take down, any tournament, right? Anytime you can be a top 10 rebounding team, you can control the pace of the game. You can kind of, get those second chance buckets, things along those lines. But I think this is one. I mean, Winthrop is 21-1. They only lost one game this year, so I think this could potentially be a big run for them. Now they would have to go up against, obviously Villanova is going to be a tough team, but I think in my bracket, I don't love picking a ton. Like for me, I don't love picking a lot of upsets in the first round. For some reason, I just don't. And I usually do okay for the most part, but this might be one of my upset picks. It'll be an interesting playing against Purdue in the second round. Purdue's definitely going to beat North Texas, so a Purdue Winthrop could be a fun one to watch. So that'll be a fun little corner of this bracket to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit you called it with Baylor. Baylor's was dominant. They got hit with COVID, and then everything that happened in Texas. So they, even when they were back from COVID, they couldn't play games for a little bit when they had that whole weather issue, and Texas was pretty much shut down, and nobody had power, and nobody had anything going on in Texas for a little bit. So since they've come back, they've had their only 2 losses of the year, one to Kansas by double digits, and then they lost to Oklahoma State in the tournament. They just haven't looked like the same team for sure. They don't look like they're as confident. We'll see if they can get it back together, because they deserve this 1 seed, but recently they just have not been playing to that 1 seed level. I think one of the best first round matchups in all of the tournament is going to be that UNC Wisconsin game. Those are 2 teams that kind of maybe underachieved when you look at record and look at stature. These are 2 programs that in the last decade have been 2 of the best programs in college basketball. Should be, both teams coming in though, especially UNC is playing a lot better than they were the early part of the year. They've lost 2 games in their last 10, but those were by 2 and 3 points to Florida State and Syracuse, games that could have gone either way. So I think, I lean UNC right now, actually. But that game's going to be super fun to watch. And I'm one of the best matchups of all the first round for sure for me. I think bottom part, you kind of touched on that 5-12 game. I agree with you there. Villanova lost a key piece 2 games ago. They've lost their last 2 games. They're trending the wrong direction. And Winthrop only has 1 loss on the year. Granted, not playing in a high level of competition, but I think Winthrop's going to be a really popular pick for a 5-12 matchup. And I agree. Roll the dice on it. Agree on the Purdue game with you. Although in the last 10 tournaments, there's been 7 years where a 4 seed's lost. So we might want to think about, we got to pick a 4-13 upset as well, because it seems like those are happening a lot more often than maybe they used to. Bottom part of this, Ohio State and Texas Tech are the teams I kind of look to. Arkansas is a pretty solid team as well, but those are the only 3 teams in the bottom half of this bracket that I think could potentially come out of the bottom half there. So we'll see what happens, but overall, a decent. This one could be a toss-up unless Baylor can return to form, and then they should win this region going away if they can get back to who they were at the early and middle part of the year.
I'm not gonna lie. I think whoever comes out. Texas Tech is going to beat Utah State, in my opinion. I think Utah State is overmatched. I think they kind of, I don't know. I didn't love their resume coming in. They were kind of a bubble team coming into this too. So Texas Tech is a strong team. I think they're going to potentially come out of this, lower, this third tier of this region, and come out. And I think one of the bigger, more fun matchups is going to be whoever wins that second tier and third tier. So if that's going to be a Purdue or Winthrop versus either a Texas Tech or like an Arkansas, I think those matchups right in the middle of this region are going to be a lot of fun. This might be one of my more favorite regions to watch. So I'm going to be doing a lot of checking in on scores and watching some of these live. But again, Colgate, you never know. I don't know if they could upset that 14-3. You were talking about that 14-3. You never know what could happen in a shootout. So, keep an eye on that matchup for this particular round of the South region. So All right, let's get into this last one. So this is the West region. Now, West region, Gonzaga is the number one overall seed. Now they are projected to, for most experts, win the whole thing. I was listening to uh, Jimmy V. No, why am I blanking?
Jay Billis.
Well, Jay
I'm just
Billis
throwing
too.
out.
No, Jay Billis and our boy, who's the voice of college basketball,
Dick Vitale.
Dick Vitale, yeah, Dickie
Dickie
V.
V.
I was
Yep.
getting mixed up with Jimmy V, and I was like, Jimmy V's dead, and I was like, no, like rip Jimmy V, love Jimmy V. I was like, yeah, there we go. Dick Vitale. They all have really been big on the Gonzaga Bulldogs taking this whole tournament down. And this could be, their year. They're undefeated. This is kind of that one you want to watch out for, going all the way to the very, very end. Obviously, I'm a big Zags guy, so I'm hoping that they're correct, but you never know what could happen in a tournament. A lot of things can happen. There are some teams in this, corner of the bracket that can be potentially a little scary, but I mean, you got your Kansas Jayhawks here that can potentially be a speed bump. But you never know. As far as this whole side of the West region goes, I think there's a couple teams. Iowa is a team that number 2. I think for me, I've always kind of been a little down on Iowa. I don't know. They've just never been for me a team that I've ever been scared of. So the Zags beat them early on in the season, and they've been they've been good. Garza's leading that team, and he's one of the best players in the entire country, and he's obviously a stud. But I don't know. I'm just not sold. They don't pass the test for me when it comes to them being a big time threat in the tournament. P. Nix. Funny, the 2, 3, and 4 seeds in the West, the Zags have already beaten this year. So that was also mentioned earlier. So there was a broadcast on ESPN. Iowa, Kansas, and Virginia all handled by Gonzaga early on in the season. So, and they were pretty convincing wins. They weren't exactly just close games or anything. They were convincing. So that's a big resume builder for this Gonzaga team when you're going against any of these top other tiers teams in this current region. Like, we've beaten these guys before. We could do this again. That mentality is really strong for a team who is in a bracket in this corner that I think is a little bit lighter, on the talent side. I don't think this is like really a barn burner region when it comes to tons and tons of talent. So we'll see what happens here. Some of the other games, Oklahoma, Missouri in the 8-9, not super exciting for me. That one, Virginia. We'll see if they can come back from the COVID protocol. They should be able to handle Ohio in that game there. Creighton with an embarrassing loss in that Big East championship to Georgetown. I don't expect them to have a carryover against UC Santa Barbara by any means, but everyone looks at the 5-12 matchups. Obviously, I don't think that's one of them. I think that's going to be more of a 5 winning that one. But the Gauchos have lost only one game since January, and this is their first tournament appearance since 2011. UC Santa Barbara brings experience, 20-plus games, each of the last 4 under Coach Joe Petsernik. So, I think they're capable of beating Creighton, but I just don't see it happening. UC Santa Barbara finished the season 22-4. So we'll see what they end up doing there. I don't envision like a big run, but and then we have a couple friends, Oregon taking on VCU, the 7-10 matchup. So I just don't see a lot of excitement here in this region for some reason. A lot of mediocrity for me.
Yeah, I think if Gonzaga plays to their potential, they should roll in this region. Granted, they should roll in any region if they're playing to potential, because at their potential, they're the best team in the country. I think that's pretty apparent. Doesn't mean they're going to win it. That's in a single elimination tournament. That's, the best team doesn't usually win. Not even half the time do they win. So Gonzaga, like we talked about, has beaten the 2, 3, and 4s. I agree with you. None of those 2, 3. This is like first of all, this is the COVID region because Kansas at the 3 and Virginia at the 4 are the 2 that had to back out of their conference tournaments due to COVID stuff. And it's really interesting from what I've read. It seems like the 2 teams are handling that way different. So Kansas had already had 2 guys who, prior to the conference tournament, either tested, I assumed at this point, tested positive, or at least due to COVID protocol, had to sit out the tournament. Their roommates, they sat out. One of them's David McCormick, their big man, who's integral piece to the team. Without him, they're in a lot of trouble. He's their only guy that can score inside. But it sounds like he'll be back for the tournament. And then during the tournament, they had one other guy test positive. Sounds like it's rumored to be Jalen Wilson, although that's not fully confirmed. A guy who's either hit or miss. He's either really good or really bad. So I think they could get by this first weekend if he's not able to play. But it seems like they're practicing still. Like they're going to practice a couple times. They're going to then head out to Indy without these 3 guys. And then the 2 guys, it sounds like, will fly out later. Where Virginia, I guess, is not practicing. They're all quarantined, every one of their players, off of 1 positive test. They won't, practice prior to Thursday at the earliest. This is a Saturday, is the first round for these teams. Keep in mind, everyone, if you're used to and you haven't heard, obviously March Madness normally starts on a Thursday, the first round of the tournament. This year, for whatever reason, they decided to start it on a Friday. So instead of a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we got a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So keep in mind there. So if you're all hyped up on Thursday, you're like, I'm going to take the day off work. I'm not going to do anything today. I'm just going to watch college ball. You're not going to see a lot unless there's some NIT games that day. But anyway, Iowa, to me, as a 2 seed, isn't that strong of a 2 seed. I could actually see Oregon upsetting them in the second round. I think when Oregon's playing to their potential, they haven't been healthy a lot of times this year, but fully healthy, they could be in the mix there. Iowa's a great offensive team and not a great defensive team. And generally, I don't like those teams in the tournament because when you don't lock down on defense is consistent. If you know how to play defense, you can do it game to game. Offense, if you're not a good defensive team and you have to rely on making shots on offense, all it takes is one bad day, and then you're out in a single elimination. So I don't love Iowa either. Virginia's not playing great. They love to slow things down and make it ugly. But overall, this region, Gonzaga should roll, and I'm not sure if they shouldn't beat every one of these teams by double digits. So,
we were talking about 14-3 upsets, like, because there's always one. It'll be interesting. Ohio.
Don't bring that up here. Not in this region. Oh, you're saying 13-4 because you said 14-3, and I'm like, don't you dare.
Oh, no.
Talk about Eastern Washington.
Sorry. I meant 13-4. Ohio and Virginia. That was an interesting one because of how Virginia ended up finishing their end of their season, obviously not playing in their conference tournament, getting knocked out because of COVID. So the momentum that they would have ever had going into the tournament is gone. Whereas Ohio, the Bobcats had 2 COVID pauses, but they won 3 MAC tournament games by an average of 14.7 points per game. As far as, Jason Preston, their leading scorer, 16.6 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. I mean, he's a stud. This could be a repeat of their 2010 Sweet 16 run. I mean, potentially. I mean, that's a little aggressive, right? I like to, just give a little bit because you never know. You always have to have some sort of Cinderellas. But I just think as far as this first round goes, there's 2 teams that are going 2 different directions. One from a smaller conference, in Ohio finishing 16-7, but finishing the season strong. And Virginia from a stronger conference finishing this, the conference, tournament on the sidelines and not having momentum. So this could be 2 different teams. This could be a recipe for disaster for Virginia, who has a history of losing early tournament games of late, them being the one team to ever lose in the first round
as a 1 seed. Although they are technically the defending national champions.
Technically, yes. Yeah.
Obviously, we didn't have a tournament last year. So 2 years ago, they did beat Texas Tech in the national championship game. Granted, very different team now, and I agree with you. I think if they hadn't had this setback, they probably win that game no problem. But if they're not practicing until Thursday, they're not going to leave until that day or maybe Friday to go out to Indianapolis. Like, it's hard to get cohesive and ready to play when you're just isolated in quarantine. So it'll be interesting to see how they come out. But I guess, say the same for Kansas, except, like I said, I don't feel like they're handling it the same way, and they're still practicing and hopefully going to be a little more prepared for it. Although I guess they're also endangering the fact of maybe getting more guys testing positive. We'll see. I hope not. That'd break my heart.
No, 100%. And I think, from a betting standpoint even, I think I like it more from a betting standpoint. Whatever, if you're going to be putting some money on these games in the tournament, look out for Ohio to cover whatever spread that's going to be. I haven't looked at some of the spreads yet. I'm going to look a little bit closer here. But I would love already, just going into this, knowing that Ohio is going to cover a spread against Virginia, whatever that's going to be. I feel like it's going to be at least 8 or 9. If I'm like just throwing that out there. But
yeah, they didn't really get the lines out until kind of right when we were starting, so I haven't seen them either. So
we'll yeah. But as far as everything else goes, no matter who gets into that Appalachian State Norfolk State number 16, it's going to be fodder for Gonzaga Bulldogs, who are going to be just cruising through this region. So this being said, what are you thinking, Scotty? Now, keep in mind too, this is all going to be played in almost kind of a bubble situation like the NBA playoffs was. So all these games are going to be in the same city throughout the course of the entire tournament. So regardless what region, even though they're labeled region, East, Midwest, West, so on and so forth, they're all going to be played in the same city. So, Indianapolis is going to be the home for all these games. Takes away a lot of that home court advantage. Sometimes you kind of have that with some of the regions typically, so that plays a little bit of a factor with traveling fans. Also, fans, there's going to be very limited fans. They're not going to have a huge crowd either way for any of these games, no matter what. So, there's going to be some of those, factors that play in when it comes to this tournament taking place all together in one spot.
Yeah, I'm hoping there's enough fans there. I feel like every year you get like a 10-year-old boy whose team is losing, and they flash to him in the crowd, crying, devastated. So I hope we still get it. We need that moment every year. So I hope we get that moment still at least. Some boy, and to be honest, that would have been me at 10 if I would have been at the game. I remember crying at like a meaningless. I went to a high school playoff game against teams or schools I didn't even go to. Well, I hadn't gone to high school yet. At 10 years old, and I was crying at the end of that game. So I would have been every time Kansas lost, I was a wreck. I would have been that boy. So I'm not judging those kids, but I still love to see it.
Who was that kid most recently that was the braces? He was crying, and
I feel like Northwestern. Was it Northwestern?
It might have been Northwestern. Help us out in chat. I think it might have been Northwestern. I can't remember who it was, but there's a historic run of people. I mean, even the Loyola Chicago, you had grandma, what's her name? Sister, whoever.
Sister, yeah. She was number one fan.
Man, we should go back. So we're by the way, Wednesday we're gonna go through all of our picks. We're gonna have a big, March Madness special on Wednesday where we're gonna go through top to bottom who we think are gonna win each region. Pick by pick. So I hope you guys can join us. Follow if you're not here so you can make sure you get those notifications on Facebook, on Twitch, on YouTube. We're streaming on all three. So make sure you're following on our Wednesday show when we make all of our selections for the March Madness bracket. Make sure that you guys are here so you can win your office pools, your family pools. I know there's a lot of, trash talk and stuff that goes in. We didn't get that last year, guys. We didn't get that. So we want to have that this year. So make sure that you're here. Scotty, you've been historically good on your picks, I think, with your brackets. I've won a couple in my day, so, I mean, your office pool, you've been doing pretty well too, right?
Office pool. I used to run a pretty large pool in high school that usually had, 50 to 60 guys in it. And I won that one year. So I've had some good breaks when it comes to the bracket and whatnot, but it is a bit of a toss up, but we assure you this year we're gonna nail it. So
Oh, 100%, which
be
means
here Wednesday.
Wednesday night, 7:30 Mountain Time, 9:30 Eastern, and then 8:30 on the West Coast, Central. 8:30 or no 6:30 on the West Coast, 8:30 in the middle of the country. We have you covered on all the different time zones. So we got you taken care of. But we have a lot of opinions. We have a lot of we've kind of alluded to some upsets and some of the things that we could potentially see happening in this tournament. I'm not gonna lie. We're talking about this. This has been a lot of fun for us to go through. I'm getting jacked up for this. We didn't get it last year. I'm so excited.
Well, and we haven't talked about this, but I think we should both have our own brackets that we fill out on the Wednesday show and make our picks, and then we have some sort of substantial bet on the line for whoever wins gets the other person has to do. We'll figure it out. Maybe we'll talk through it on the Wednesday show, but something.
Yeah.
Let's put something at stake here.
And chat for wherever you're watching from, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook. Let us know who you think are gonna win. Obviously, I'm rooting for the Zags. Am I gonna pick them? Probably. I'm probably gonna pick them.
No, you don't even have to wait for Wednesday on that
one. So yeah, I think that as far as this goes, this is one of the best times of the year. Steph in chat, I haven't watched March Madness in years, but I'm getting into it this year. I blame y'all. Hey, that's what makes it exciting, and I hope you get into it. Because you're Michigan, right, Steph? You have Michigan that is going to be making a big run. Obviously, let's go back to that Michigan. Number one overall, or in the East, I should say. So they have a good chance. As far as this goes. Yeah.
In worst case, if they're not playing well, Juwan Howard as coach could do anything on the sidelines. He could go after the other coach. I don't know if you guys saw in the conference tournament, he got ejected of a game going after an opposing coach. So Juwan Howard's a bit of a wild card. So Michigan, in that sense, will be fun to watch just to see if Juwan Howard goes off.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Michigan's going to be a serious contender, unfortunately, for me, because I know that they're a really good team. They didn't really show out as much as down the stretch. Every time I went to go watch a Michigan game, everyone's hyping Michigan. They always end up laying an egg every time I try to go watch them for some reason. I don't know why. But I don't know. It's just one of those things that I just Steph, actually, yeah, it is Northwestern. She sent me a little Facebook. It was actually, hold on one second. It was Northwestern against Gonzaga. It was a 60. I don't know why I missed that. So it was actually against Gonzaga. Thank you, Steph, for throwing that in the the DMs here. I don't know why. Maybe it's just that sad boy crying to himself with his little braces. Oh man.
To be fair, I think he was the coach's son or something of Northwestern. So but still great to see. You love to see it.
And then I hope I don't know about this, but the 11 going back to this region real quick, the 11-6 matchup. Whoever ends up winning, I have a feeling Michigan State's gonna, Tom Izzo, go Izzy, right? In the chat, let's spam the Izzy, go Izzy. I have a feeling they're gonna come away with this, and there could be a little upset there with BYU. I don't actually believe a lot in BYU as much. They're a good team. They're in the WCC. They competed against, Gonzaga pretty well, but then ended up just choking down the stretch in that game. But I still, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just a WCC guy when it comes to the Zags, and I just watch a lot of those games. But I remember the BYU game in the conference tournament when they won the championship. And I was upset, and my wife knows about this because we were watching this game, and they were losing, and I was like, there's no way they could lose this game. They end up losing, and the BYU team storms the court. And I was absolutely livid after that game. I was like, these BYU fans, they celebrate this. You celebrate things that you don't ever get, right? You never do anything, so when you do something, you celebrate it. I'm like, you guys are celebrating rushing the court on a WCC championship, thinking you guys like you're the top of the world. Like that's their championship. That's what they want to celebrate. And I'm just sitting here like, man, these standards here in BYU are just so low. They just love winning their conference championship. And I don't know. It was just one of those things. It just rubbed me the wrong way, and I just never have. I've always hated BYU since. Like I've never had I've been kind of indifferent on them forever. It's always been a St. Mary's kind of ending for the conference championship, and then BYU's trickled in the last few years, but. Poor BYU. I just hope they get crushed.
I think BYU will be the main rival for them. It's good to see that you don't hold on to things. So
I hold on to things good. Like crazy.
The whole time you reference Michigan State and Tom Izzy, and all I could think of is that another sponsorship opportunity for Michigan State. They can be the Michigan State Spartans presented by Rocket Mortgage, coached by Tom Izzo, presented by Izzy Sparkling Juice. So we got it.
Oh my god!
It just could be a whole novel of sponsorships for Michigan State moving forward. I don't know why this hasn't happened. Izzy Sparkling Juice. If anyone within that company is watching us right now, get on the phone with Izzy or Izzo right now and make that happen.
They missed an opportunity right there, and they need to take advantage of that for sure. Why isn't that a thing? I mean, we're selling sponsorships for everything nowadays, right? I mean, why not one more? Go, Izzy for Izzy, Crazy. So that's what we're looking at, guys. So we hope that this was super informative for you. Obviously, this is, and Scotty, I'll be honest, this is the most college basketball I've watched in a single season in probably a long time. Like I typically watch a few games here and there, but I was really invested this year in getting into watching some of these other teams, Iowa and Michigan and some of those Big Ten teams, even the SEC. I mean, we were talking the other day, and I was jacked up about the SEC, about Arkansas and Alabama and Tennessee. So there's a lot of different things that I've been keeping an eye on this year that I typically don't. A lot of fun. I can't wait for this tournament. This is the most excited I've ever been for a tournament, I think, in my life. So that makes me, just really ready to roll. I can't wait to make my picks. We're going to be throwing our picks out here on Wednesday, going just region by region, pick by pick, going through it. So hopefully you guys can all be here for that. We want to see you guys back here on Wednesday, and it'll be our March Madness special for sure. We can't wait for that. So throw out all your questions, all your hot takes in the chat. We're still going to be fielding as much of these as possible. The rest of this stream, we're only on for a little bit longer here, but I love to hear what you guys have to say. Steph, you've already said, Michigan. We got Deb going for the Zags. We got C. Stemper going for the Spartans. We got, we got just everybody just throwing in their teams. I want to see what everyone else has, who you're rooting for in this tournament this year.
Yeah, throw them out there. Throw out your thoughts, and throw out any bet ideas you have for Chris and I to lay a wager on against each other in a bracket. If you have any good ideas for what we can bet on, throw it out there in the chat. I'm ready.
I mean, and it's got to be kind of a bigger one, right? It's got to be like, because this is this is over the course of a long period of time with this tournament, so we might make it a big deal. We might make it a big one. Either Scotty's got to grow a beard, or I got to shave mine, or something crazy.
If I grow a beard, it'll show up on this simulcast in like 5 weeks. You'll see it finally, maybe a little bit.
And it's got to be
super blonde.
It's got to be one of those beards that it's got to be like at least as long as mine. Like it won't be like I'm gonna grow out like a 5 o'clock. No, we're gonna grow it out a little bit. And then if I got to shave mine completely, my wife is gonna hate that. Obviously, she never wants me to do anything along those lines when it comes to shaving my face clean, like completely. So we'll see what we end up betting.
What does it feel like to know that your wife hates your face?
Oof. I mean,
I'm kidding.
I mean,
I'm
I
kidding.
I shovel the driveway, so she's gotta like it enough for me to go out and do that every single day. By the way, it snowed a ton here in Colorado. We have like 2 feet of snow. We shoveled twice today, and we're still have like about a foot of snow outside. It's crazy.
Yeah. I went out and shoveled, and then I only went out once, but I had to shovel everything again by the time I was done with my first time around because of how much it had put back on there. So we'll see if we can ever. We might just be stuck at home until the tournament starts. Who knows?
Deb and Chad, I'll be on for Wednesday. Be trying to dig out. Obviously, a lot of local folks out here in Colorado digging out of snow, and then obviously saying no, please, on shaving my beard because that's gonna look awful. And Steph, damn dude, I don't know what that's for, but it's probably I don't know, but who knows?
Couple feet of snow, or my comment about your face. I'm not sure.
One of the two. It might be both. So, yeah. By the way, we didn't do. Speaking of bets, I actually had a fantastic weekend of betting. I ended up. So the one week I don't do my optimal prime picks of the week on my Friday stream because we were doing some more of the March Madness specials. I ended up hitting a 7-team parlay for just under $1,000, which is crazy. So I don't know why the one week that I don't end up getting into my optimal prime parlay, I end up on stream with everybody here watching. I end up skipping that and I end up hitting. Crazy. I was talking to you about that over the weekend. I was like, man, this is the most I've won in a long time, and I don't really hit these 7-teamers very often. So this was a celebration.
For sure. And for people like doubting him, he did show me his phone. He did hit a 17 parlay. I saw it. It happened. It's real. But if you would have put those picks out on Optimal Prime, it probably wouldn't have come to fruition.
No, absolutely not. It wouldn't have hit.
Might have gone 0-7. Who knows?
Absolutely. So, hey, I'll take it. Big win. So I'm happy about that. So I'll take it. If you guys are here and you guys are watching here on Twitch, YouTube, or Facebook, make sure you hit that follow button on either one. If you're on Facebook, hit the like button on our stream. If you're here on Twitch, hit that follow button, and same thing goes for YouTube. It means a lot to us, and then you get all the notifications so that you know when we're going live each and every week. Every Wednesday, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time. And then we will just make sure that you guys are getting everything you need to know from your March Madness bracket standpoint, because we're going to be covering all that on Wednesday. But we want to cover one more thing before we go off air tonight, and that is our Mile High Spotlight. So we're not going to spend a lot of time here, but we wanted to just at least throw our home team a little bit of love as we're going through the week. So as far as the Avs, the Nuggets, and the Rockies go, I might have the Avs, by the way, today's score. It was 3-0 when I was preparing for the stream, and they were up, and they were still in the game. Mayday 525, thank you for the follow. Appreciate you being part of the stream. Love the support.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mayday. So going into this, I don't know. I think the Avs ended up, they were up 3-0 in the third. I don't know.
4-1. Yeah, they won 4-1.
So yep. Disregard that score on screen here. But big week for the Nuggets, the Avs, and the Rockies when it came to the games themselves. Maybe not so big from the results. So the Nuggets ended up splitting the week here. They ended up getting a big win against Memphis. They needed it coming off the All-Star break to get another win coming out of the second half of the stretch, but then ended up falling 116-103 to Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks. So they have a big week this week coming up. So Monday they have Indiana, Charlotte on Wednesday, Chicago on Friday, and New Orleans on Sunday. So honestly, looking at this schedule and this slate for the Nuggets coming up here, I think they have a really good opportunity to win at least 3 out of 4. I have a feeling they're going to drop one of these for some reason. I don't know why Indiana is one of those teams that kind of gives them troubles at home. Maybe New Orleans is one of those, but I think they're going to go. I predict a 3-1 week for the Nuggies, and I hope. I mean, that's pretty optimistic, and I'd be happy with a 3-1 week. What are your thoughts on the Nuggets here?
Yeah, coming out of the All-Star break, they were hot going into the All-Star break, and I was like, this is hitting at a real bad time, unfortunately, to take this break, and it's kind of shown out. And they did get the win at Memphis in a tight game that could have gone either way. Joker in these 2 games has done Joker things. He's now probably moving at least. I think he should be the front runner for MVP, but he's at least, obviously Embiid just got hurt. So we'll see what that does for Joker's MVP stature, competing with likely LeBron and Embiid as the top 3. So we'll see what happens there. Unfortunately, my boy Jamal Murray has come out of the All-Star break, and he's still on break. In Memphis, in that win, he went 1 of 14 from the field. And then I think last night against Dallas, he was 4 of 13. So a 5 of 27 combined when he was playing really, really well the past 15, 20 games prior to leading up to that All-Star break. So hopefully he gets back on the track this week. A bunch of games against the Eastern Conference minus New Orleans at the end, where I feel like New Orleans is going to be the toughest matchup in these. You're right. They need to go 3-1. I can't say, hey, they should go 4-0 because 4-0 is always hard to do in a week. 3-1, because 2-2 against these teams would definitely be a disappointment. So need to go 3-1 there and take care of business. And right now, I think they're maybe 6th in the West. Is that correct?
I think so. Yes.
I'm gonna look it up, but
Mayday in the chat. The Sixers don't know how to stop. They want that 1 seed. Yeah. No, I think the Sixers, man. Hey, so Mayday? How are you feeling about Embiid being out for a little bit? I mean, you definitely want him back up and running for the playoffs, but man, even for me, I feel anytime a top player in the league ends up going down for a long period of time, 2 to 3 weeks, I think is the time frame. So who knows, but. I think the Sixers are going to be, once he gets back healthy, man, they're going to be there. I'm telling you.
No, they've been playing. They're still won 5 straight. I'm sure he was holding his breath when Embiid went down. It looked bad when he went down. He did walk off the floor on his own, and fortunately, it's nothing too serious, and there's no structural stuff there. Nobody wants to see Embiid already has had enough injury history through his.
As far as if they can keep that one seed, I think if they can keep that 3-1 record for this week, I think it'll be great. Mayday, it stinks, but this team is something I've never seen before. Truthfully, I thought he was out for the season when I saw that. Yeah, no, when you saw that hyperextension, if you see the replay of that, it's actually pretty rough.
It's bad.
And it just hyperextended kind of backwards, in instead of the normal bend, it went backwards. It was rough. So you always hold your breath anytime. I can't imagine if something happened to Jokic like that. Oh man, I would just be crying, making it would be the most awful thing. So I don't know. It's rough, but as far as that goes, hopefully he comes back soon. Obviously you want to see those best players in the league. I think we actually may have disconnected a little bit from our stream for a second. So hopefully you're still with us, and hopefully you're hanging out with us here towards the end. We're almost wrapped up, but Mayday, thanks for popping in and sharing some of your thoughts here. Keep them coming. We love it all. As far as the Avalanche go this week, Avalanche ended up going 3-1 this past week, so that was fantastic. I thought that they did really well when it came to kind of righting the ship a little bit. They have not played up to expectations, and in our opinions, I would say. So it's nice to have them, finishing strong with the week.
Yeah, another week. I feel like I talk about this every week with the Avs. How their standings aren't quite what we feel like they should be. But they're playing really good hockey, actually. They're just not putting the puck in the net. So 3-1 week against some teams that were certainly inferior in the Coyotes and the Kings. But they, even in the loss, they outshot the Kings in that 3-2 overtime loss 35-14. So they outshot them by 21 there. The next game against Arizona, they outshot them 46-14, which is just insane. And then they followed it out against the Kings the next game, 46-18. So they are outshooting these teams by almost an average of like 28 per game, which is just wild to think about. They got the win again tonight. So they're riding some momentum. Now third in the standings, top four in their division make it, and they're pretty firm on being in a good spot there. They're just a point out of second actually, but then Las Vegas has a little bit of distance on top. So we'll see. They're super talented. I think they'll be fine moving forward. They'll just get ready to go for the playoffs, but should be another not a week where they face a ton of the elite teams or the higher ranked teams in their division. So hopefully they're able to take care of the Ducks and Wild this week and go 3-0.
Yeah, absolutely. Mayday. Thanks for all the chats. Avs going looking better, and the Nuggets for me going 2-2, and the Pelicans Pelicans and 1 versus Hornets or Indiana. So yeah, I think that as far as a 2-2 week, yeah, I can see that too. Indiana and New Orleans are the big challenges of this week. I don't think there's going to be any issues with the Nuggets getting wins against Charlotte or Chicago. Obviously, this is a nice little homestand, so I think as far as that goes for the Nuggets, it's well needed, which is weird considering they don't play as well at home, at least this season, as they have on the road. They've actually been a little bit better on the road. So, it's kind of I'm kind of concerned about is a homestand more so than I am with like the Avalanche having a homestand. It's fine. They're competing at a higher level, much like Mayday has mentioned. But as of late, yeah, I just hope that if they can, again, a 3-1 record this week for the Nuggets would be absolutely a great week. I would take it in a heartbeat. As far as the Avs go this week, they got Anaheim and Minnesota twice. All three are winnable games. Hopefully they can continue this stretch. They've 3-1 this week. If they can go at least 2-1, if not 3-0 this week, I think that they can be in a good spot. They're still trying to push the envelope when it comes to their division with Las Vegas, and so hopefully they can continue that pressure, keeping that on. So that's my biggest thing here. The Avalanche, I think, will be in a place where these should be winnable. Mayday, they don't have any problems like my Flyers. By the way,
the Flyers are like my preseason team.
Yeah, no. So Mayday, you missed out early on when we were doing our preseason kind of highlight show for our kickoff for the NHL season, but Scotty was big on the Flyers this year. He had them as some underdog to go deep. So, hey, there we go. Well, hopefully they can pull it off here. They need to figure it out quick. Yeah, I think the Flyers will be fine, though. I think the Flyers, I've been kind of keeping tabs on them just because I know, Scotty, you've been, pretty high on them this year. So I've actually put a couple bets on them earlier on in the week, and they didn't do too bad for me. But so Flyers, I think they'll right the ship. I don't think you need to push the panic button on them quite yet.
Yeah, have lost 4 or 5. The East is such a tough division. That East in the NHL is pretty stacked with a lot of good teams. So Flyers are sitting 5th right now. Need to get into that top 4 spot and a few behind Boston for that 4th spot right now. So when Boston's the 4th team in your division, that division's pretty damn good. So they'll have to start playing some better hockey, and I need them to. They, like I said, they're my pick, so let's go.
Yeah. I think, I'm surprised you don't have a long shot pick on, because they have on FanDuel, at least on FanDuel, I think they have the division. Do they have division winners on that? You can bet on who wins each division.
I don't recall. I'd have to look.
I'll have to check. I wouldn't mind. Yeah. I'd be surprised if they did and you didn't have a bet on those Philadelphia Flyers early on, but
Well, they're 13 back of the Islanders who are in first there. So I don't know if I want to pick on the Flyers to win the division at this point, but they just need to get in that top four. That's all that matters. Just make the playoffs.
Mayday, I would love to take
Mayday, I
Boston.
would love to take Boston out.
Yeah. Oh,